Lewis Hamilton joins Red Bull and leaves Ferrari behind ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix. Stay tuned until the end to learn when it will be made official before anyone else. Subscribe only if you want to stay updated with the latest breaking. The Formula One paddock has been set ablaze by a development so extraordinary that it feels like the script of a film rather than reality. Lewis Hamilton, the most successful driver of his generation and one of the sport's greatest icons, has agreed terms with Red Bull Racing. The shockwaves from this announcement are so powerful that they have reached far beyond the racing world, dominating global headlines and forcing every team, every driver, and every fan to rethink the future of the championship. Hamilton, who only recently was heralded as Ferrari's ultimate gamble to reclaim its lost glory, has not only walked away from Maranello's promises but has chosen to place himself inside the garage of his fiercest rival, next to Max Verstappen, creating a combination that many believe could change the very DNA of the sport. For months there had been speculation about Hamilton's growing doubts. At Ferrari, the frustration was visible, his patience strained by a pattern of costly mistakes and a car that failed to deliver on its potential. Meetings with senior figures at Maranello grew tense, as assurances of progress never translated into consistent results on track. His camp began exploring alternatives, though few imagined that the most radical option, joining the very team that had dethroned Mercedes and stood as the benchmark of modern dominance, was even on the table. Yet once Christian Horner was forced out of Red Bull amid controversy, a door cracked open. The restructuring that followed stripped away layers of expensive executive contracts and performance bonuses, releasing a pool of financial flexibility that was redirected toward the boldest driver recruitment in recent history. Subscribe only if you want to stay updated with the latest breaking. Red Bull's leadership, desperate to demonstrate strength after weeks of scandal, wasted no time. Initial contact with Hamilton's team was quiet, informal, delivered through trusted intermediaries. But the moment Hamilton showed interest, everything accelerated. Within days, his management was meeting Red Bull executives in Salzburg, in sessions that stretched into the early hours. The discussions were not only about salary but about vision. Hamilton wanted clarity that this was more than just a short-term publicity stunt, that Red Bull saw him not as Verstappen's support act but as a central figure in their continued dynasty. He demanded a voice in technical decisions, influence in development strategy, and an assurance that his arrival would mean more than a headline. Red Bull, eager to secure him, agreed. The financial terms themselves are staggering. Hamilton is believed to have secured one of the most lucrative base salaries in the sport, with layered incentives tied to performance. Victories, poles, podiums, and championships each carry escalating bonuses, meaning his potential earnings could dwarf even his record-breaking deals at Mercedes. But beyond the numbers, the true allure of the contract is the power it grants him. Unlike at Ferrari, where he often felt marginalized in strategic debates, Hamilton will now be given a seat at the table in shaping the technical future of the car. For a driver obsessed with detail and determined to control his destiny, that influence may prove more valuable than any paycheck. The ramifications are immense. Ferrari has been left humiliated, their carefully built narrative of Hamilton as the savior of their project collapsing before it ever bore fruit. Mercedes, who once built their dynasty around him, must now watch as he aligns himself with the very force that ended their reign. Rival teams are rattled, whispering behind closed doors about how to counter a Hamilton-Verstappen pairing that could dominate with a ferocity unseen even during the height of Mercedes supremacy. The FIA and Formula One's commercial leaders are equally aware of what this means. Ratings will surge, attention will skyrocket, and the drama on and off track will reach unprecedented levels. Inside Red Bull, however, lies the greatest unknown. Verstappen has been the team's undisputed leader, the golden child around whom every resource has been focused. Now he faces sharing the spotlight with a legend who has nothing to prove yet everything still to fight for. Their coexistence is the great question hanging over the sport. Will they drive each other to heights unseen, pushing Red Bull into an era of untouchable supremacy? Or will the rivalry consume the team from within, with tension in strategy meetings, conflicts over upgrades, and fireworks that spill over onto the track? Engineers and strategists are already bracing themselves for the intensity of managing two titans under one roof, a challenge unlike anything Red Bull has faced in its history. Fans are captivated, divided, and louder than ever. For Hamilton loyalists, this is the ultimate masterstroke, a refusal to let his career fade into frustration, a declaration that he will do whatever it takes to fight for titles again. For Ferrari supporters, it feels like betrayal, the abrupt collapse of a dream they invested so much in. For Verstappen's fanbase, it is both thrilling and unsettling, The thought of their champion facing his greatest rival inside his own team is a recipe for either glory or chaos. Subscribe only if you want to stay updated with the latest breaking. Social media is ablaze, every corner of the debate lit up with predictions, arguments, and speculation. Hamilton, however, appears unmoved by the noise. He has always thrived in the eye of the storm, and this move is no different. For him, it is not just about money or headlines. It is about control, ambition, and the refusal to let anyone else decide how his story ends. He is stepping into the heart of Red Bull's empire, into the world of the driver who has defined the new era, and daring to stand as his equal. For Red Bull, it is a declaration that they will not simply defend their dominance but amplify it, creating a driver lineup so powerful that it will be remembered long after the current regulations fade. And for Formula One, it is the perfect storm: ambition, rivalry, betrayal, and spectacle all converging into a saga that will be told and retold for decades to come. What has truly set the sport ablaze is not the legal maneuvering that brought Hamilton to Red Bull or the financial shockwaves rippling across sponsorship deals, but the way this move has torn into the very DNA of a team that had long been defined by a single driver's dominance. For years, Max Verstappen has reigned as the unquestioned figurehead, the focal point around which every department revolved, the voice that shaped the car's philosophy and the strategies that carried it to victory. His authority was unchallenged, his presence magnetic, his results giving him a power that extended beyond the cockpit and deep into the corridors of Milton Keynes. Every upgrade was designed with his style in mind, every pit stop sequence seemed to prioritize his needs, and the culture itself evolved to reinforce his role as the team's golden child. That reality now faces its greatest disruption in the form of Lewis Hamilton, whose arrival has shattered the natural order, introducing another force so strong it cannot be ignored or contained. The first meeting between the two drivers has already passed into legend inside the team, recounted in hushed tones by those who were present. What was framed as a polite sit-down, a moment to establish common ground, instead escalated into something closer to a duel. Verstappen, unwilling to leave any ambiguity, laid down his marker immediately, declaring with steel in his voice that Red Bull was his territory, that Hamilton's presence would not alter the structure that had been built around him. Hamilton, composed and unshaken, responded with words that carried the weight of experience, reminding everyone in the room that no team is ever owned by a driver, that loyalty and identity in Formula One are forged only by results and by the collective effort of the crew. The reply stung, and Verstappen's frustration was visible to all, the atmosphere so tense that senior figures had to intervene before the confrontation spiraled further. What was supposed to be a formality became an opening salvo in a rivalry that will now live not only on the racetrack but within every fiber of Red Bull's operation. The consequences have already begun to ripple outward. Engineers and strategists, long accustomed to aligning every decision with Verstappen's instincts, now face a new dynamic. Some, fiercely loyal to Max after years of shared triumphs, are determined to preserve his supremacy, unwilling to dilute the formula that has brought them unprecedented success. Others, however, are energized by the chance to work with Hamilton, whose reputation for technical insight is legendary. Stories are already circulating of Hamilton spending hours with simulation data, identifying subtleties in balance and tire behavior that even experienced engineers had overlooked. His arrival has injected both excitement and division, with factions quietly forming in workshops and design offices, each group convinced that its chosen driver represents the true path to victory. This conflict will not remain behind closed doors. Every weekend will become a test of balance and control. When a new aerodynamic package is ready but only one version exists, whose car receives it first? When both drivers demand pit stop priority in a crucial race, who gets the call? When strategic decisions require favoring one over the other, who will Christian Horner and the pit wall back? Each of these choices has the potential to inflame tensions, not only between Hamilton and Verstappen but also among their crews, amplifying the rivalry beyond the circuit. The once unified team may find itself caught between two gravitational forces, each pulling in opposite directions. Beyond Red Bull's headquarters, the rest of the paddock watches with a mixture of disbelief and fascination. Rivals whisper that Red Bull has built a dangerous paradox. By pairing two drivers whose egos, pride, and hunger for dominance are unmatched, they risk imploding from within. Others, however, shiver at the thought of what such a partnership might produce if it works. The idea of Hamilton and Verstappen pushing each other relentlessly, extracting every last fraction of performance from the RB chassis, terrifies their competition. For rival engineers and team principals, the nightmare scenario is not their rivalry destroying Red Bull, but their rivalry elevating the team to an even higher peak of excellence. Even among fans, the reaction is divided. Some revel in the chaos, calling it the greatest gamble in modern Formula One history, while others cannot wait to see which of the two giants will bend the other to his will. Social media is ablaze with debates, speculation, and imagined showdowns. Will Verstappen double down and defend his throne with even greater ferocity, or will Hamilton's poise, political acumen, and unparalleled experience tip the balance? Every qualifying session, every wheel-to-wheel battle, every radio message will now be dissected as part of a larger war for control of Red Bull's soul. This is no longer simply about who wins races. It is about identity, power, and legacy. Red Bull has placed two titans in the same arena, creating a rivalry so combustible it threatens to redefine the modern era of the sport. The season has not even fully begun, and already the air is electric with anticipation. What unfolds between Hamilton and Verstappen inside the same garage may prove more captivating than any championship battle scene in years. And whether it ends in glory or implosion, one truth is certain: Formula One has entered a chapter unlike any other, where the very foundations of dominance and loyalty are about to be tested in ways no team has ever dared to attempt. Toto Wolff's reaction to the latest twist in Hamilton's saga has reportedly been nothing short of volcanic. For months, perhaps even longer, he had been quietly working every angle, negotiating in whispers, and laying the foundation for what he envisioned as the ultimate reunion. To Wolff, the idea of Hamilton returning to Mercedes was not just another transaction. It was the chance to bring full closure to an era that defined modern Formula One. He had already shown a willingness to bend rules he normally enforces with iron discipline. Salary structures that he typically guards with ruthless consistency were softened for Hamilton, concessions on car development input were promised, and a clear path to influence at the very heart of Mercedes' technical program was laid out. He even spoke internally about the symbolism of ending Hamilton's career in the very colors that turned him into a legend. This was a plan built on trust, respect, and the shared ambition of rewriting history one last time. To see it fall apart in the most brutal way possible, with Hamilton choosing Red Bull, has left Wolff shattered. Behind closed doors, those closest to him have described his emotions as a mixture of fury and grief. In conversations with confidants, he has referred to Hamilton's choice as a betrayal of legacy, words that capture both his anger at the personal slight and his despair at what it represents. Wolff believed that no matter the turbulence of the past few years, the bond between them was unbreakable. They had fought through defeats, celebrated championships, and endured the most intense rivalries together, only to see it dissolve with a single decision. The fact that Hamilton has turned not to a neutral team but to Red Bull, the very organization that dismantled Mercedes' era of dominance, is like salt in an open wound. This is not just another driver move. For Wolff, it is the rewriting of loyalty itself, a reminder that in Formula One, even the deepest partnerships are vulnerable to rupture. In response, Wolff has wasted no time recalibrating Mercedes' trajectory. He is said to be aggressively pushing forward plans to restructure the team's technical leadership, fast-tracking young engineers into senior roles, and scouting emerging driver talent to anchor Mercedes' future. His new strategy focuses less on leaning on established stars and more on building a collective machine that can withstand upheaval. Yet, despite his focus on the future, the pain is evident. Insiders believe every Red Bull podium with Hamilton behind the wheel will sting personally, each victory a reminder of what Mercedes could have reclaimed. The bitterness of this chapter, they say, will haunt Wolff for years, even as he rebuilds. In Maranello, the atmosphere is arguably even darker, fueled not only by anger but by humiliation on the grandest scale. Ferrari had staked everything on Hamilton's arrival, portraying it as the dawn of a new era, the signing that would drag the team back to the top of the sport. The Tifosi had been promised that the most successful driver in Formula One history would not only deliver wins but embody the resurgence of the prancing horse. It was supposed to be destiny, Hamilton in red, lifting Ferrari back to glory. Instead, in what feels like record time, that dream has collapsed into disarray. Hamilton's departure before fulfilling even a fraction of his commitment has left Ferrari scrambling for explanations, searching desperately for words to appease a fanbase that lives and breathes loyalty. Reports suggest John Elkann has taken the move as a personal insult, calling it a mark against Ferrari's honor. Fred Vasseur, the architect of Hamilton's arrival, is facing immense pressure, with critics inside and outside the paddock questioning whether his gamble has irreparably damaged the team. For them, the betrayal is not just professional, it is cultural. Ferrari is not just another racing outfit, It is an institution, and to see Hamilton abandon it for Red Bull is a humiliation that cuts to the core of their identity. Italian media has erupted in fury, splashing headlines that denounce Hamilton's exit as an affront to Ferrari's soul, and framing it as one of the most disgraceful moments in modern Scuderia history. Pundits and fans alike are calling it a failure of leadership, a collapse of vision, and a sign that Ferrari's appeal as a destination for greatness may be fading. The Tifosi, known for their unshakable devotion, have turned that passion into rage. For them, this is more than a transfer, it is abandonment, a wound to their pride that will not heal easily. The backlash is expected to be relentless, and for a team already struggling with inconsistency on the track, the added burden of fan outrage threatens to destabilize everything further. The timing could hardly be worse. Ferrari has been battling performance swings, flashes of competitiveness offset by strategic blunders and reliability issues. Hamilton was meant to be the stabilizing force, the driver whose presence would lift every aspect of the operation. His departure not only strips them of that leadership but delivers a psychological blow at the very moment they needed unity. To lose him to Red Bull, the very rival Ferrari measures itself against, is a humiliation layered with competitive disaster. For Mercedes, the loss is personal. For Ferrari, it is existential. And for Red Bull, it is a masterstroke of timing and ambition. Hamilton's decision has torn open old wounds, unsettled the balance of power, and ensured that the political drama of Formula One will dominate as much attention as the battles on the track. What was supposed to be a story of revival and redemption has instead become one of betrayal, anger, and humiliation, a saga that will shape the sport's narrative for years, long after the checkered flags have fallen. Within the walls of Red Bull's facility, the sense of urgency is impossible to ignore as preparations for integrating Lewis Hamilton move forward at full speed. Every department feels the weight of expectation. Engineers sit for hours in dimly lit simulator rooms, recalibrating countless variables to match Hamilton's unique driving rhythm, adjusting suspension responsiveness, steering torque, and the subtleties of brake modulation to ensure that every movement feels instinctive to him. Ergonomic specialists huddle over cockpit mock-ups, altering seating angles by millimeters, repositioning steering wheel grips, and reprogramming button layouts to mirror his muscle memory developed over years of racing. Data technicians, meanwhile, work frantically to establish seamless channels for telemetry exchange, ensuring that Hamilton's inputs can be compared directly with Verstappen's. It is here that tension is already beginning to mount. Verstappen's inner circle is reluctant to accept a system of total transparency, worried that Hamilton's unmatched ability to absorb information and translate it into speed will erode the advantage Verstappen has built with Red Bull's machinery. Hamilton refuses to entertain compromise. His stance is firm that equality is essential, that any attempt to restrict his access would undermine the very reason he joined. Leadership at Red Bull is caught between two titans, each unwilling to yield, and the balancing act grows more precarious with every conversation. The impact of Hamilton's arrival extends far beyond the garage. Commercial partners who had grown hesitant during the turbulence of recent months are re-engaging with enthusiasm, sensing the marketing power of pairing two of the sport's greatest names under one roof. Brands long associated with prestige are expanding their deals, while new global corporations are positioning themselves to be part of what is quickly being described as a historic moment in motorsport. Broadcasters are already reshaping their coverage schedules, anticipating record-breaking audiences not only for headline races like Monza and Silverstone but for every round on the calendar. Analysts forecast unprecedented engagement across streaming platforms and social media, predicting that the rivalry will elevate Formula One into mainstream cultural conversation in ways not seen in decades. The sport's commercial rights holders are quietly celebrating, aware that Hamilton versus Verstappen under the same banner guarantees headlines that transcend the sport. Yet beyond the excitement lies growing unease. Rivals are not blind to the potential consequences. McLaren's Zak Brown has openly criticized the concentration of so much talent within a single garage, warning that Formula One risks creating an imbalance that undermines competition. Aston Martin's Mike Crack has echoed the sentiment, noting that while Red Bull may reap short-term rewards, the longer-term risk of implosion is real. Privately, whispers circulate that the move, while spectacular, could destabilize the entire championship, with political ramifications that reach as far as the FIA. The fear among competitors is not only that Red Bull will dominate, but that the inevitable clash between Hamilton and Verstappen could unravel the very structure that made the team successful. Inside Milton Keynes, small signals of strain are beginning to show. Test sessions reveal subtle friction, with Hamilton requesting changes that challenge entrenched methods, while Verstappen's side watches carefully, concerned about shifts in priority. Senior managers find themselves locked in long meetings, weighing how to maintain trust between both drivers without allowing either to feel compromised. Every decision carries heightened risk: data access protocols, allocation of resources, even the tone of communication during briefings has become a matter of delicate negotiation. On the surface, the official messaging is celebratory. Two of the greatest talents in Formula One history united, ready to redefine limits. Beneath that polished facade, however, lies recognition of the volatility they have embraced. The atmosphere in the paddock reflects that tension. Rival teams prepare strategies not only for on-track competition but for the psychological war certain to unfold. Commentators analyze every gesture between the two drivers, fans speculate endlessly online, and journalists probe for any crack that might reveal discord. Every minor development, an offhand remark, a subtle expression during a press conference, has the potential to escalate into a headline. What Red Bull has created is not merely a driver lineup but a spectacle, one that promises unparalleled dominance if managed perfectly, or explosive collapse if even the smallest detail slips out of control. The stakes could not be higher, and everyone connected to the sport knows that this chapter will be defined not only by speed but by how two giants of Formula One coexist under the same roof. The shock that has rippled through the paddock is impossible to overstate. Conversations in team motorhomes, whispers in the hospitality suites, frantic calls between sponsors and executives, all are dominated by a single reality that nobody expected to see. Lewis Hamilton has chosen Red Bull. The move has detonated like a bomb across the sport, overturning every assumption and dismantling years of narrative in a single stroke. For fans, the emotions are split, fierce, and impossible to contain. Those who crave chaos and spectacle are overjoyed at the idea of Hamilton and Max Verstappen occupying the same garage, convinced it will produce a season of pure theater. They picture qualifying battles so close they will be studied frame by frame, wheel-to-wheel fights that could spill into disaster, and podiums charged with tension as neither driver accepts anything less than supremacy. To them, this is Formula One's dream scenario. Two titans trapped together, forced to collide again and again until one finally breaks. But others see only danger. They argue that the egos are too large, the stakes too high, and the consequences too catastrophic. They imagine Red Bull splitting down the middle, engineers aligning themselves with one camp, mechanics whispering in frustration, strategy calls descending into open conflict. They see championship points thrown away in fiery clashes on track, each accident not just damaging results but eroding the very foundation of the team's dominance. For these voices, the partnership is a ticking time bomb, inevitable destruction disguised as ambition. Beyond the grandstands, social media is ablaze. Platforms are flooded with endless speculation, heated debates, and unfiltered emotion. Old footage of Hamilton and Verstappen's collisions at Silverstone, Monza, and Jeddah are replayed millions of times, dissected like battle plans for what lies ahead. Hashtags dominate worldwide trends, with some fans insisting Hamilton has made the move to silence doubts about his legacy once and for all, determined to beat Verstappen on his own ground. Others argue Verstappen secretly demanded the challenge, eager to cement his dominance by defeating the only driver who ever truly pushed him to the limit. The digital space has transformed into a war zone of clashing opinions. Mercedes supporters lashing out with accusations of betrayal, Ferrari fans grieving another cruel twist in their endless pursuit of redemption, Red Bull loyalists divided between excitement and dread at the chaos about to arrive. Inside the teams, the shock is raw. Toto Wolff, a man who prided himself on his bond with Hamilton, now wrestles with outrage, blindsided by a decision that tears apart the legacy they built together. For Ferrari, the sting cuts even deeper. Twice they believed Hamilton would be their figurehead, twice they were left humiliated, watching as their dreams were shattered not by their rivals but by the very driver they longed to claim as their savior. Rival principals move swiftly, revising strategies for the future, recalibrating their approach in the face of a partnership that could redefine the balance of the grid. For the drivers, the landscape shifts dramatically. Verstappen, who once enjoyed a clear path to dominance, now finds himself facing the most relentless challenger in history inside his own garage, knowing every session will be a battle for survival. Russell, already under immense pressure, sees his hopes of leadership diminish further as Hamilton's shadow stretches beyond one team. Leclerc is left with a bitter taste of betrayal once again, carrying Ferrari's weight alone while watching his former ally reignite his fire elsewhere. Even those outside the immediate storm, Norris, Piastri, Alonso, understand that every victory now depends not just on pace but on surviving the fallout of two titans colliding. The magnitude of the situation cannot be overstated. Every radio message between driver and engineer will be scrutinized, every strategic call dissected, every pit stop analyzed for signs of favoritism. The Red Bull garage, once the fortress of unified dominance, will become the stage for intrigue, politics, and drama unlike anything the sport has ever seen. And for the audience, it will be irresistible. Each race weekend will carry the weight of unpredictability, each lap a potential flashpoint that could ignite fireworks both on and off the track. This is more than a driver transfer, it is a rewriting of Formula One's mythology. Hamilton has walked away from comfort, from legacy, from expectation, and has chosen to step directly into the eye of the storm. The consequences will echo for years. If the partnership succeeds, it will go down as the boldest gamble in sporting history, two giants forcing each other to greater heights than ever imagined. If it fails, it will be remembered as the implosion that shattered Red Bull from within. Either way, the season ahead has transformed into something unmissable, a spectacle of speed, ambition, betrayal, and rivalry that will define not just careers but the very identity of Formula One itself.